My name is Anshul Agarwal. I am the Data Science Director at Home Partners of America. And today I'm going to talk about a home recommender system that we built in-house. The system was built by Jack, Will, Nick, who are in my team. I'm just mostly delivering the message. Now, going by the theme of this conference, data translators, the main purpose of this talk is not just to discuss a home recommender system, but to share these key insights, these key learnings that to be an effective data translator, either you are a data science professional, you practice data science, or you're a data science leader, or if you're hiring new data scientists, it's not just important to know the technology or algorithms at a cursory level. What is more important is to have this ability to be able to see through the problem, to have this critical thinking ability, to understand the problem, to analyze it, to know what is the right solution that works for this problem. You have to really be able to know and understand that, hey, this solution works better versus this solution for this problem and is the most appropriate fit. So you have to have that ability, and that comes over time. And also on the technical side, as I mentioned, not just to know the algorithms and how they have been applied on cookie cutter problems, but to know the strong technical foundation behind those algorithms, like what goes on behind the scenes, so that you know that this algorithm works for this problem, or like what kind of technical approach to follow to solve this problem. You may have to mix and match different techniques. So to have that kind of maturity and ability to know and create right technical solution for a problem. So I'll close the loop on that towards the end of this talk, but that's what we want to drive home that point through this home recommender talk. Now, before I talk about home recommender, let me talk about Home Partners, who we are, what we do. So Home Partners was founded back in 2012 with a mission and vision to help people and families get into these good quality homes in these strong, desirable neighborhoods, to contribute towards upward social mobility, and to create a path for home ownership for these people and families. And the way Home Partners does that is through this lease purchase program, this proprietary signature program that's the core program of Home Partners. And I have a slide on that later, what is this lease purchase program is. But essentially, it allows people, family, residents who are looking to buy a home, but either they're not ready right now or there are some mortgage challenges, to allow them to rent a home that they potentially want to buy in future, and give them an opportunity to buy that home within like next 3 to 5 years. So that's what the program is designed for, this lease purchase program. And Home Partners has acquired a strong portfolio of over 16,000 homes and helped 16,000 families realize their this dream, and realize their dream of becoming a homeowner. And we have strong connection with real estate agents, third-party investors, institutional investors, and using that network, we have created this strong portfolio. In fact, we have like doubled this portfolio in last 2 years. And this platform, as I've shown here, there are two websites, homepartners.com, pathlightmanagement.com. So we interface through external parties and like potential residents through these two websites, but we have a strong platform where investors can invest, as well as we use data and software to constantly refine that platform and to ensure that we are providing world-class service. So going into the lease purchase program, as I hinted, like which is a core program for Home Partners. So what is this and how it offers this path to home ownership? So essentially, if a person is interested in this program, they apply to this through our website, homepartners.com. And once their application comes, Home Partners assesses their risk, like what's their income history, credit history, criminal background check on them, so that we can assess whether they are a risk to Home Partners or not. And once we have done that, once they are approved, then they can go and they can check any home which is openly available for sale on market, which is also listed on our website, Home Partners, with explicitly what rent we are going to charge on that home. So they can go and they can select whatever home they like, and they can come to Home Partners and say, hey, and they can submit properties. These are the homes I like. I would like to rent out. And Home Partners goes and buys that home, and a lease is put in place, and the resident moves in. After 1 year, there are three potential outcomes. As shown here, resident buys that home, which is the best outcome, which happens usually like 5 to 6% of the times. Most times, resident renews the lease for the next year. In few 19 to 20% of the cases, resident moves out. Now, when the resident moves out, that home which Home Partners has acquired, it becomes vacant. So it is listed on pathlightmanagement.com and we look for a new tenant. These homes are called non-lease purchase homes. So that's a whole core program. And I want to talk about this because this provides the context of like why we wanted to build a home recommender. I mean, essentially, at the highest level, we wanted to connect these tenants who are looking for these non-lease purchase homes to the lease purchase program to provide them a path to home ownership. And that's the core reason why we wanted to build a home recommender. But to go further into this question, like why a home recommender? So let me talk about this flow that I've shown on the top part of the slide. Like how do we generate leads for this non-lease purchase homes which are vacant and available on pathlightmanagement.com? So the marketing team that we have, they conduct various marketing campaigns through Google AdWords, Facebook ads, as well as we use a third-party platform which syndicates our open listings on multiple platforms. There's a syndication platform. So through all this activity, we generate leads, people who are interested in our homes. So they come, they go to pathlight.com and they check out the homes which they want to potentially rent out. And there are like few outcomes that happens afterwards. They go to the website, then they leave the website, or they come, they look at the home, they submit an inquiry, how is it, whether it's available or not, but they don't do anything afterwards. Or they like the home, they apply, but they become dormant, they don't do any activity. Or they apply to a home, but the home is popular and then they get waitlisted. So one reason we wanted to build a home recommender was to retarget this population, like this population which has become dormant, which was interested at one point. So what happens? Like, can we approach them again and show new homes? Maybe that will generate interest again. So that's one. And the other aspect that I hinted before, which is more important aspect, is to introduce these applicants who are only checking these non-lease purchase homes to the lease purchase program. Like these applicants, they currently are interested in renting, but they might be interested in owning a home at some point, and their dream home might not be that far in future through this lease purchase program, and they have never heard of this program. So this is an opportunity to introduce them to this program and to show some homes and recommend some homes along with the lease purchase program, so they get excited and they check out more what is this and how it can help them realize their dream. So that's the core mindset behind this designing home recommender. And if you think about it here, the mindset is different from a typical e-commerce consumption mindset. So like Pathlight Management or homepartners.com, it's not like netflix.com or amazon.com. Like homes are not content. We don't want people to come back on these platforms again and again and start consuming content. Like it's not about consuming homes. It's about finding their dream home. What's the right home for them? In fact, on the contrary, if they don't come back to these platforms and they find their home which they live on for many, many years, then we have achieved what we wanted. So the mindset is very different here when we are designing home recommender. It's not about consumption, it's about delivering the best value for our customers. So as we started thinking about this problem that, okay, we need home recommender, now the next question was, okay, how do we build it? Like, what's the approach we should follow? And we know like in industry, collaborative filtering or matrix factorization, these approaches are the standard state-of-the-art, undisputed best approaches that people have taken, like Netflix or even other websites have followed this approach. So why not go with that? So we started with that. And as we started using this approach or started thinking about this problem, we realized that there are several unique characteristics of this problem, something very unique and different about home recommender, which you don't see in other recommendation systems, which you typically see out there in literature or in implementation. So let me dive deeper into like what are the unique features about the home recommendation problem. Now, at one level, this problem is similar to other recommendation systems. So there is users and items. Users in this case are this future potential residents, we call leads, and items are homes, which are available. But if you go one step further, you realize that the difference here is that items, in this case homes, they naturally split into two different sets. One is the past homes, which are not available anymore, which people have leased and people are living in those homes. And the other is the currently available homes, which is a recommendation set that we can recommend. And here, so typically in a recommendation system, you have user item interaction. And here also we have interaction between leads and homes. But the interaction is also now divided in two sets. One is interaction with past home and interaction with current homes. And that becomes a challenge because interaction with past homes are not that useful. For example, if you see this slide, say we want to recommend a home to lead B, and they have interacted with an available home on the top right corner, the brown one. And suppose there's lead A who also interacted with that home, but they also interacted in the past with the past home, with that gray one in the middle, which is leased. Now, in this case, using those interactions, we can't recommend the leased home to lead B, although that would, from a recommendation system, would be perfect. But in this case, we can't do that because that home is already leased and somebody's living in that. So we can't use that interaction. Another challenge is that home availability is unpredictable. So homes which are available, suppose like in this case, lead C checks out that home, they're interested in it, they apply to it and they start living in it, and the home is not available anymore. So you can't recommend it. So there's the pool of recommendations is dynamic. It changes pretty quickly. And that's why it's very important to note that anytime we are recommending homes to a lead, we have to train the model at the time when we are doing the recommendations. Now, this is actually really challenging. Like, you cannot use a pre-trained model for them. I mean, if you have trained embeddings or matrix multiplication factors through using this collaborative filter approach, you can't use it because by the time you're recommending homes to someone, home availability is totally different. So you can't use those previous embeddings. So it's really critical to drive home that you need a runtime model training in this case, which is very different from other recommendation systems. And the other 3 points, so lead home interaction is quite minimal, like one person will check out one or two homes, they like it, they put an application, they move in. So you don't see a whole lot of interactions in your data. And so interaction matrix is extremely sparse, and that becomes very challenging for matrix factorization. Popularity bias, like many recommendation system algorithms, they face this popularity bias, like they recommend popular items. We can't do that here. Like if you recommend popular homes to leads, like one home will get multiple applications, they'll get waitlisted. Not a good customer experience. We don't want to do that. And lastly, generally when people are picking homes, they go by the characteristics of the home, like bedrooms or any other features that they're more interested in. So that way, so lead similarity, which is more of what is leveraged in traditional CFMF techniques, is not useful here because one lead might only be interested in 3-bedroom homes. The other lead might be looking for across like 2 to 5 bedroom homes, and there might be a lot of common interactions, but still you can't recommend like a 4-bedroom home to a person or a 5-bedroom to a person who's looking at a 3-bedroom house. So these are some of the challenges why we can't use the traditional recommendation system techniques, and we realized, okay, we need something new. So then the question was, what approach do we follow? What approach do we use? And if you see, the cue was in this last bullet point, like leads pick home by their characteristics. So going by that thought, because leads pick homes based on their features, we can follow an item similarity approach. So in particular, you can look at the homes that a lead has checked out before, which we call the search set here. So they, in this case, have checked out these two homes, look at their characteristics, and find similar homes. And you can see what you want to recommend from the similar homes. Now, high level, the approach looks simple and follows some of the other approaches that have been followed in the literature, but it has its own caveats, and I'll hint to that. But few considerations here is that when you're looking for similar homes, you should consider all of their properties in the search set, not like in particular. So even if there are like differences in features of properties in the search set, you have to account for that. And second, which is a more important point, is ensuring quality through putting explicit filters and bounds when you're looking for similar homes. Like if a lead has searched for 3-bedroom house, like how much you want to expand. Do you want to look at 2-bedroom house, 4-bedroom house as a similar home in your recommendation, or you want to stick to 3-bedroom house? So like this trade-off between quality and quantity. So you have to be mindful of that. And that's actually really critical for this problem. And the third part is the HUD Fair Housing Act, which basically says you can't discriminate. So we have to be cognizant about this actively, that we are not discriminating on any basis when we are recommending homes, and strictly recommending them based on the features of the search set. So, okay, we can use this item similarity approach, but like as I talked about the second bullet point, and like how do we design the algorithm, and what is the similarity measure we use? So, so that was a critical question here, and let me explain with this two examples. So, suppose you have a home in a search set, and it has 5 features with different numbers here: 10, 20, 50, 15, 10, and we're looking for similar homes. So if we apply filters and similarity measure on all 5 features, then most of the times what we found was that we don't find any recommendation for most leads. Now it's either because our filters are too tight, if we relax them, then the quality suffers, or otherwise, like how do you set the filters? So that's like one challenge. So, okay, I mean, you can't match on all 5 features because then you don't get many recommendations and your system doesn't work. So another approach is you can match on some filters or like some features and you leave out the other features or relax them. So now if we follow that, suppose in this example, there are 4 homes we match. First one matches feature 1 and feature 3 closely with numbers 1248. Second home matches feature 2 and feature 5. Third home matches feature 4 and feature 2. And fourth home matches feature 1 and feature 5. Now, from a similarity score perspective, like looking at the difference between the features of the, the search set home and these recommendation homes, they all look very close. So now the question is, okay, what properties we recommend here? Which homes we recommend? Do we recommend all 4? Or do we prioritize between these features? Is there any criteria we can use? And what about these other features that we didn't match? So if we pick this first home where feature 1 and 3 matched, what about feature 2, 4, 5? Like how do we know what is more important for this lead, for this customer? So these are like some of the challenges we started facing as we started building this item similarity approach. And one thing, as I mentioned earlier, also it came out was that you can't follow a cookie cutter item similarity algorithm. Like even if you use different kinds of distances, Manhattan distance or any other kind of like distance measure, that doesn't resolve any of these questions that we started facing here. So that was one thing. And second thing which came out here was that we started seeing some combinatorial aspect coming out of this problem. Like, how do we rank these features? Which features are more important? How do we pick and choose which features to give more importance to? How do we relax or tighten these filters? And as we started realizing this, the approach became more apparent that, hey, we need a more open-ended, more customizable approach for every customer here. And that's what we did. So eventually we used a mixed integer linear programming approach, MILP, as I say here, and this offered us a very flexible approach to solve this problem. So like here, you can have any objective that you want to maximize on, like maximize number of recommendations or maximize quality or combine both with a Pareto front. So we could experiment with that. Also on the constraint side, we could let the model decide like which filters to apply and which filters to relax. We can let model determine the filter tightness. Like, should we, in that 3-bedroom example, tied it to like only 3-bedroom recommendations, or if we're not finding enough recommendations, expand it, and the model can decide that dynamically. Let model determine the ranking of recommendations, like based on the parameters of MILP. We get the final optimal numbers, and using the optimal numbers, we can rank different recommendations and see which ones are the best one. And one important thing here is that the filters themselves get customized for each applicant. And you can see that this offers us this advantage of doing model training for each lead at the time of making recommendations. So we don't have to like combine different leads that like have a fixed rigid algorithm or approach for all leads. Like each lead is unique and we can have a unique solution for all of them. And that's what this approach offered us, like a very flexible approach, which we implemented, like I've shown as recommendation workflow. Overall, any applicant who's coming in, we can retrieve the latest market properties at that time, like what's the recommendation set available, retrieve their search set, use the search set and this available properties to run this mixed integer model, get the optimal value, score and rank, and then deliver recommendations, and do that for every lead separately. So that was the whole approach we followed here, and it was flexible and worked out in this problem. So coming back to the points that I raised earlier, and I told you I'll complete the loop. So this was an example, like here, Home Recommender, we started with the problem, we started looking at some of the traditional approaches followed, but we realized that, okay, we can't use any of them, and we need a more flexible approach, a less followed approach in the world of recommendation systems, but it worked out perfectly for us. And again, we relied on these 3 points that I hammered upon earlier, that you need to have this critical thinking ability that, okay, for this problem, what do I need? What's the best approach? I need to have this deep technical foundation, like understanding of these optimization algorithms and what goes on behind the scenes to be able to actually design a custom algorithm for this problem. And that's what we were able to do. And that's the message we want to give, which is really important for data scientists as they're building their experience in this space. And the third bullet point also, like this is the most challenging part, and it comes with time and practice, like to be able to take an open-ended problem statement that comes from stakeholders or anywhere, and to be able to convert to an equivalent math problem. I mean, once you have an equivalent math problem, then you know, okay, how to go and solve it. But to bridge that gap, that is challenging and takes experience. So those were the messages I wanted to give. Thank you for your time and attention. And this is my contact. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions on this talk or anything I talked about. I'll be happy to answer more and connect more on this. Thank you.